What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and the esteemed privilege of talking to the associate producer of 350 Days and the wrestler. He's the one, the only, Evan Ginzberg. Evan, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh man, it was kind of kismet. I was like, I've been wanting to. We've been friends on the socials for a while, and I was like, would he ever, whatever? And then, like, I don't know, like a shooting star kind of falling down, and it's not falling down because it was rising. But I saw you on another podcast, and not only do I do it, I love podcasts, right? The art of it and what have you. So when I saw you on another one, I was like, maybe, just maybe, he'll do mine. And you were so gracious enough to do so. So thank you, good sir.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
No worries. So, I guess we'll start with that, right? So, how did your love of pro wrestling begin? You grew up in the Northeast, so did you get any of the Vince Senior WWF?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was a Sunday like today, and it was a rainy day like today in New York. You could hear by my New York accent. And I was a bored kid, and all of a sudden, my mom saw how bored I was, and this was pre-internet, pre-video games, pre-everything back in the 70s. And she starts fiddling with the UHF dial, the mysterious UHF dial. And it was a lot of PBS channels, which a kid wouldn't be that enamored with. And it was a lot of foreign language channels. But all of a sudden, I see this monstrous guy, this huge guy pounding on what looked to be an American Indian. And I'm like, what is this? And my mom goes, this is wrestling, pro wrestling. And it turns out it was Chief Jay Strongbow, who was really Italian, but I didn't know that at the time. And this wasn't quote unquote real, which I didn't know at the time. But I'm a kid and I'm like, oh my God. So all of a sudden, Strongbow does like this herky jerky comeback, this war dance, and he's chopping and pinning the guy. And my eyes are like this, and it's like Marvel superheroes and villains to a kid. And then they had the promos, and there's the Valiant Brothers. I mean, it was just magic back then. And I just begged and begged my dad to finally take me, and I did in 1974. And it was Madison Square Garden. And I walk in, and the first thing that goes through my head, wow, it's in color, because we had a black and white TV. That's how long ago it was. And I sat there, and there was Bruno, Saint Bruno, and Strongbow, and Nikolai, and Blassie, and the Valiants. Oh my God! As a kid, they were 10 feet tall and larger than life, and charisma off the charts. No pyro, no entrance music. The building would just shake when these guys walked down the aisle, and I was hooked. That's 50 plus years ago, and I'm still an avid fan.
I mean, that's incredible. That's what brings us here, right? I mean, the pageantry of it, right? You were talking about no pyro or anything like that, or how a Jay Scarpa could be Chief Jay Strongbow, right? Like, and I think about, what is it? The missing link, Dewey Robinson, yeah. And how he was one character for so many years, right? Even the Iron Sheik, right? Like babyface, whatever, shaves his head and then becomes this like Iranian bad guy, right? And that's the pageantry. You talked about the pyros and not having it because you didn't need it. You really didn't need it. I mean, you even look at the UFC, the early days, they had, big entrance stages and what have you. And Dana White will tell you it's because we couldn't sell tickets to this bloody thing, right? So, Bruno and the rest of the dais were essentially filling it out with their own volition and personalities, right? And that's it. That they took up and encompassed Madison Square Garden once a month for how long?
They were there for decades, every month, and certain years they were there 14 times a year. And usually on a Monday night, my dad was a New York City taxi driver. And he said anybody could go out Friday or Saturday night. He said the hip people go out Monday night. That's what he
Uh,
said. So, and my father also said, he was a New York City taxi driver, and New York's very jaded with celebrities. He said the only people that stopped traffic back in the 60s and 70s in New York, he said it was Muhammad Ali, who was the most famous person in the world. It was Julie Newmar, the Catwoman, because nobody was built like that back then.
mm-hmm.
And he said superstar Billy Graham. He said he walked down the street, he looked like he had dropped from another planet. Nobody looked like that back then. There wasn't a gym on every corner. It was a different society back then. And Billy Graham, between the colorful clothes and the way he was built, and again, just the charisma off the charts. So sometimes today fans will go, oh, Bruno and Billy Graham and Pedro, they just punched and kicked. They weren't there because, you felt it. Every time one of these guys, again, we were total marks. It was a very blue collar audience. And when the hero was getting pummeled, you felt it, you believed it, your heart was racing. It was, you didn't have to be, a technician to elicit a reaction. It was very meat and potatoes simple back then.
Which, I mean, to me, I think, I find myself, I was even doing it when I was younger, like watch, reading the After mags and whatever, and looking at, like vintage, posters, pictures of like Luthez and Vern Gagne and what have you, right? So now with YouTube and technology the way that it is, I can actually go back and watch those matches, right? And as somebody who, I'm in combat sports, right? So do MMA, pro wrestling, all of it. If it's done in a ring, cage, or whatever, that's what I'm into. And those are some of the greatest stories ever told. But those meat and potatoes fights and wrestling matches look very reminiscent of things if you went out, at a bar and two guys were getting into fisticuffs. That's what you got, is meat and potatoes, right? Like the guy at the end of the bar that isn't saying anything, just surveying the scene. Yeah, he was going to get into a fight that was very reminiscent of maybe a Bruno Sammartino or a Dusty Rhodes. Doesn't probably get fired up like Dusty Rhodes or Chief J Strongbow, but like there's a heel in the face. So what Bruno and whether it be, was it Ivan Koloff or anybody of the heels, those monster heels, and man, the Northeast, the heel monsters that came out of it, like Killer Khan, like it's mind blowing. But
well, the thing was, it was built on, with the exception of the 10-month Billy Graham reign, it was built on the face champion, Bruno for years, Pedro for years, Backlund for many years. So you needed these monstrous, huge 300-pound heels to even get the fans to think there was a chance of them losing. So these guys, King Kong Mosca, King Bruiser Brody, Ernie Ladd, Killer Kowalski, Killer Khan, you mentioned. These were monstrous guys. These weren't little high-flying guys. And so I'm sitting at the Garden in 82, and all of a sudden, Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask come out. And, we didn't know what hit us. This was, pre-internet and everything. And we're sitting there with our mouths open because we never saw moves like this. It was like you saw the future right there that night. And the fans loved it. I mean, they loved it. It was an amazing thing to see.
So, oh man, there's so many. So, obviously, I'm a huge, you said Mark. I'm a Mark for Bruiser Brody, right? So, what was it seeing him live? Because, like, I see, obviously his stuff in WCCW, with Fritz and, the Von Erich boys and what have you. Some of his stuff in St. Louis or whatever. But to see him at the Garden, like.
Well, I'll tell you, it was interesting because in 1975, you had Ernie Ladd, superstar Billy Graham, and Ivan Koloff. That was basically 75, 76. That was basically the guys that were on top. So all of a sudden, a very young Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen came in, and we didn't know them, and it wasn't that big a deal until Hansen accidentally broke Bruno's neck. Then all of a sudden, he was a much bigger star than Brody because of that. They had the match at Shea Stadium, Bruno and Hansen. But then I saw Brody live in the 80s when he was a huge, huge international star. So I go to this indie in Jersey, and he's wrestling Abdullah the Butcher, and they're rampaging through the crowd covered in blood, and the fans are running like a Godzilla movie, like Godzilla and Mothra are wrecking Tokyo, and we're all running from these guys. And it was like an adrenaline rush. It was unbelievable. Brody live in the 80s, when he was an established huge star, to see him live, that was amazing. And less so in 76 when he was new, and we just, Bruno, take him, even though he was a huge guy.
Sometimes it takes that machine to get to him. You even see, like, Hogan. I know that's a controversial figure, now and there, but it's more Hogan than anything else. But you see him as, Terry Boulder and what have you, and had Classy Freddie Blassie as his manager, right? And people didn't really take to him, and then you see him, like, literally 5 years later in Hulkamania, and that's it. And yes, that started in the AWA or whatever, but, like, sometimes it just takes that machine to give you a little shine. Even in, like, current day, I mean, he just got released, but Braun Strowman was doing extra work forever for them, and you would think, like, that guy and Vince going, like, oh, that's going to be my star, but it took him 3 years of doing extra work, whatever. So sometimes, again, it just takes that machine.
Yeah, we had Andre and Hogan. Hogan is a heel. They were headlining, years before the WrestleMania match, all throughout the territory. I saw them headline the Nassau Coliseum, and they drew. And Hogan was a big guy, but not a great wrestler by any means, especially that early. And then when Gagne, ironically, kind of honed the All-American, the whole Hulkamania shtick, Vince smelled money and brought him in. Hogan didn't even wrestle Backlund at the Garden. He wasn't that big a star. He wrestled him at the Spectrum, Philly Spectrum, and other places. But it really took him many years after the fact, when late 83 into 84, when he came in as champ here, where all of a sudden it was a big deal, Hulk Hogan. But he didn't come every month like Bruno or Pedro or Billy Graham. He came 3 or 4 times a year, like a special attraction. So I'm not fully convinced he's the draw they made him out to be.
Right.
Because Bruno would pack the place month after month, and Hogan 3, 4, 5 times a year. It was a different deal.
That's interesting. Especially, when Hogan's hyperbole, right? That's the hashtag there. I wrestled from coast to coast 4 times in one day and all that stuff like that. And you're like, maybe not. Maybe that's just you in your mind.
Well, they wrestled plenty back then. Our documentary, 350 Days, was based on the title was based on NWA champs, at least. Those guys literally wrestled 350 days a year, and they were never home. And that's why, Ric Flair has 37 titles and 37 ex-wives. I'm exaggerating. Yeah. But no, seriously, when we shot this documentary, Bret Hart said when he was champ, he wrestled 330 days. And Greg Valentine said when he was Intercontinental champ, he wrestled 320 days. So the number's not exaggerated. 320 or 30 or 50 for the NWA champs. So I'm sure Hogan was up there, because they were running them, all across the world, literally the world. But whether he wrestled 400 times a year, that's debatable. But he worked plenty back then. He destroyed his body too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I look at, Hogan did the leg drop, and I look at like Matt Hardy with his like chicken wishbone legs at doing it off the top rope, and like, man, your spine's gonna shrink, man. Like, this is not gonna be great for
You
long
see,
term.
people in the business don't like the word fake because they'll say to you, my hip replacement wasn't fake, my knee replacement wasn't fake, my 3 divorces weren't fake, my kid's not talking to me because I wasn't home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or their graduation or anything isn't fake. And these guys really sacrificed to entertain us. And to this day, I think it's an outrage that you could wrestle hundreds of days a year and not be considered an employee and not get pensions or health benefits or 401ks or whatnot. And a lot of these guys do not or did not end well. And now it's $1 billion corporation. They could take half of 1% or 1% of their enormous profits and take care of these guys. It's disgraceful. At the very end, like just recently, Billy Graham, Virgil, and Butch all
Yeah,
needed GoFundmes at the end. And when the fans they all pissed away fortunes on wine, women, and song. I was an agent in pro wrestling. These guys are friends of mine, and they told me the numbers, and a lot of them never broke 100 grand while on the road so many days, sending money back home. So they didn't have fortunes to piss away. Yes, some did. You could even say many did, but you can't say they all made fortunes. Many didn't, and you can't say they all pissed it away. Nikolai kept his money. Bret Hart certainly kept his money. They all, it's really insulting to the wrestlers even to make generalizations like that.
yeah, and it's wild, right? Because even with how funny, if you don't know the both of them, right? How wrestling and combat sports really kind of mirror each other.
Oh yeah.
The same antitrust lawsuit that was filed against the NWA in the 50s, right, and getting blackballed and what have you, is very similar to the one that the UFC, which is again WWE and UFC, along with like Professional Bull Riders League, are part of TKO, right, a publicly traded company, and yeah, it's happening in the UFC as well. It's happening everywhere, right? And it's maddening.
To me, again, I don't want to make generalizations the other way, but to me, a lot of these guys, these corporate guys, glorified pimps, and they're living off the bodies of wrestlers, MMA guys, boxers, even the porn industry, whatever the case may be. The vast majority of them do not end well. And to this day, I mean, you see a WWE quote unquote superstar making big money. That's one thing, but there's plenty of indie guys who, have their 14th concussion and never made any kind of money. And, they have all kinds of horrific injuries, and they need a GoFundMe for to fix whatever is wrong with them. And they're all brutal businesses. And, boxing, especially, the brain is not meant to be punched in the head. And I'm sure in MMA, UFC, it's newer than boxing. You don't have the long-term studies, but I'm pretty sure that having black belts kicking you in the head cannot be a good thing for the human brain.
Oh, or Olympic level wrestlers, slamming you in your noggin or on your neck, and you're like supposed to continue the round. I think that's, I would even say that boxing is a bit more brutal because in MMA, like there aren't standing eights, right? Standing 8 counts if you're knocked out. So that happens in boxing, right? So you could see a guy. I think over the last couple of years, you're starting to see more and more when things aren't regulated as well, or maybe just even an improperly trained, referee or what have you. But guys, they Yeah, and girls, they get up and whatever, and they finish the round, take them to the back, and they collapse and die.
Oh yeah, I mean wrestlers have died in the ring.
Hmm.
You know, Killer Kowalski was a friend of mine. He was wrestling this guy, the Oklahoma Kid, and the guy died during the match. And Bruno wrestled the guy Chick Garibaldi back when he was like 23. He died, and Ox Baker basically made his career. He fought two guys who died in the ring. They died from legitimate heart attacks. They were older guys. They weren't in great shape. And they made it. Oh, Ox Baker killed him with the heart punch. And,
Heart punch, yeah.
which was not the case. The guys had heart attacks in the ring. Back in the day, it was a different business. These guys were, smokers and beer drinkers, and they were out of shape. They were overweight. And Dory Funk Sr. died right after a match. Not in the ring, but
right.
So there's a history of it, and it's. Oh man, I'll tell you a story. Recently, I still book wrestlers, not as much as I used to, but I had Tommy Rich booked for multiple appearances, and I booked Tommy Rich onto this New Jersey indie. He was in New York, New Jersey for like a week. He's sitting there, and a 39-year-old indie wrestler, Vince Steele, dies in front of him. He says, 39 years old. The guy was 450 pounds and a smoker, but beloved guy, people were devastated. And Tommy Rich is sitting there, he's trying to sell his, he's there to sell his merchandise, cut a promo. He's not there expecting to watch somebody die in front of him. He was so upset. He's a sweet guy, he's an older guy now. He's pushing 70. And he says, I'm in the business 50 years. I never saw somebody die in front of me. He was really devastated. So, these are rough businesses. Anything could go wrong. I was a heel manager on the indies, but I wasn't trained. I never took bumps. And one day we roll into the Bronx, and the promoter doesn't speak English. And he looks at me and he goes, Luchador? I go, no. So we're the heels. I'm the manager. So all of a sudden, the faces are in the ring chasing us. And I don't know for sure, that this guy, the promoter, told them, Evan doesn't take bumps. Evan's not trained. I'm legitimately running. I'm really running because I don't want these guys to put their hands on me because I don't know if there's communication here. So it's a dangerous business. Greg Valentine, who's a dear friend, he walked up the ring steps on an indie. The steps collapsed and he tore up his knee. He tore up his knee walking up ring steps. He didn't even get into the ring. He was hurt. So anything could happen. This is what people don't understand. I mean, a lot of the guys, they don't like battle royales because they can't see, 360 degrees. Big guys are coming at them, and you could. So if you watch closely, some battle royales, a big star literally throw himself out early. Just let me get out of here because you don't know what could happen. So these are rough businesses, and especially boxing. I still think boxing is the most dangerous.
I agree.
Got guys punching in the head thousands of times.
And in training, and you see like training videos and you're like, oh, there's this kind of, I don't know, it's a very macho, like, fight battles in the gym or whatever. Well, you're also taking brain damage there. And then what's left of you in the ring when it matters? Why are you taking the bumps or the knocks on the head when nobody's paying?
There was recently an article on exactly that. They said the sparring in the gym, you even with the headgear, you're still getting punched in the head repeatedly, and it's just not healthy. I mean, I'm not a doctor, obviously. I mean, guys like Thomas Hearns today, you can hear the speech is slurred. I mean, I'm probably as old as him, or same, his speech is slurred. I wasn't punched in the head thousands of times,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Which, I mean, is, with this kind of heart and advocacy for the people that entertain us with and pay the dear price, was this what led you to, create and adopt the, what ends up being 350 days?
Well, what happened was Darren Antola, who's blue collar boxing cut man and trainer, ironically, he loved wrestling, especially during the 80s. And I met with him and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this documentary." He said, "I love these guys back in the day, Orndorff and Snooker." And he starts rattling off all these names. And we were just totally in agreement, who was great, who wasn't, etc. And he had 36 legends. We build Billy Graham and Bret Hart as the stars, but Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, Ox Baker, they all had big parts in it. And when he asked me, do I want to do it? Initially I had reservations because this was after The Wrestler, and I just said, it's going to be very hard to top The Wrestler with anything. But he was so passionate about it. And I said to the editor, Michael Burlingame, I said, make a movie that would make an 80-year-old woman cry. I said, we don't need another movie. Make a movie that would make an 80-year-old woman cry who never watched wrestling, who had no interest in wrestling. I said, make that movie. I said, we don't need another movie. The guy has 1,000 action figures in his man cave. The journalist goes to the gym and they put him in an arm bar. It's been done 1,000 times.
Right.
I said, let's do something with them pouring their hearts out. And Darren Antola and his business partner, David Wilkins, and Michael Burlingame, the editor. And we were in agreement on it. We just we had the same vision for it. So you watch this film and they're talking about literally breaking every bone in their body. And Stan Hansen and these guys, they're pointing to everything that was broken, damaged, ripped, torn. And when the smoke cleared, it was very moving. And we're proud of it. And, it's still out there and millions of people have seen it. So not that you're ever going to get quote unquote rich off a documentary, but we're proud of it because it really told the story of how these guys sacrificed, literally hundreds and hundreds of days and being away from their family. And I've had wrestlers say to me, Evan, I'm always in pain. Wow. Always in pain. And this is what people don't understand when they get into it. You're 20 years old, you have a dream. I want to be in WWE. I want to, wrestle for New Japan, whatever the case may be. And, on that rainy day when you're 50 or 60 or 70, you're going to feel it. They have an expression, there's only so many bumps on my bump card. Mm-hmm. There's only so many punches a boxer or a MMA fighter, can handle. It's at some point, something's got to give. It's the human body, and gravity isn't fake. You throw a huge guy through the air. At the very end, some of my heroes, I've seen them in wheelchairs. Lou Albano, Iron Sheik, Harley Race. Yeah, I mean, Abdullah the Butcher has been in a wheelchair. He's doing better now. DDP is helping him with the DDP yoga, but these guys really, really sacrifice for us in many different ways. And I'm grateful to them because some of the best nights of my life were seeing wrestling. And I tell people, as you get older, your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, whoever took you as a kid, they're gone now. So you have these memories. My dad died when I was 20. So going with him to wrestling as a kid are among my greatest memories in my life. So it becomes even that much more meaningful.
My condolences to you on your dad. I've lost my dad as well. Both my parents, and
Me too.
yeah,
So you know what
yeah,
it's like. Yeah.
yeah. But it's those memories that endure, right? And what is that saying? It's better to love and lost than to never love at all, right? So these memories of your parents, of our parents, right, are tethered with these amazing memories of the action that we saw between the ropes, right? And when our parents are not here, and when you see guys and girls still struggling with the same things financially, mentally, physically, whatever, that some of our heroes did 20, 30, 40, 50 years before it, and you're like, wow, the business really hasn't changed.
Um, a lot of our heroes ended up pushing a broom. Guys who headlined arenas around the world, made promoters fortunes of money. They ended up, being security at the rock club or the strip club or whatever the case may be. A lot of these were blue collar guys that, did not have, higher education or whatnot, and their skills were limited. What they knew was wrestling or boxing or
Mm,
MMA fighting or
yeah.
whatever. And if they didn't make big money, and the majority did not, some of them did not end well. And yeah, it's not to paint a totally negative picture. When we did The Wrestler, Jim Cornette, and I love Cornette, the Midnight Express were my all-time favorite tag team. Jim Cornette said, we don't all end up in trailer parks, and I understand that. I understand.
Mm,
Nikolai had a farm, and other guys ended up quite well. DiBiase did just fine. A lot of these guys ended up well, but Darren Aronofsky, every film he's ever made leans dark.
yeah.
He doesn't do rom-coms.
Right.
So that's the story we wanted to tell in The Wrestler. Nobody's saying they all end up broke and sick and in trailer parks, but many do.
Hmm. Yeah, and to have that representation, and especially in this day and age where, I mean, I don't, if you're a certain age, right, he likes it, he really likes it, and you can call him back to the Life commercial, right, the cereal commercial. But there aren't many cultural touchstones, right, because everybody's in this kind of represented group. You like anime, you like comic books, you like this and whatever, and there's no uniting thing, right? So to have a cultural touchstone of whether it be football or you know, um, MMA, pro wrestling, what have it. What did JR used to say? An ass in every 18 inches, whether that's in the arena, at home, at the bar, what have you. That's what you're here to do, right? The sanctity of sport or whatever, that goes right out the window. I mean, the Olympics cut out wrestling, right? One of the tentpole events from ancient Greece, right? So it's an ass in every 18 inches. So, I mean, it's wild to know that they're still kind of going through it, and the darkness that Darren basically represents in his movies. Well, that is a similar trend in a lot of combat sports and sport that have soccer. I mean, football, anything that has to do with your brain and the vitality of it. It's not great.
Oh yeah, now they're saying even with kids, you might want to keep your kids off the gridiron because of brain injuries, concussions. It's just having huge guys barreling into you at full force. You could have all the padding in the world, and the human body could only take so much. And again, yeah, if you become a huge star and you're making crazy money, that's one thing. But the majority, that's not the case. The average NFL player is going to have a 3-year career, and many of them, they're kids and they don't have that financial education or
Yeah.
whatnot, financial literacy, and they'll burn through that money and thinking they're going to have a 20-year career, and all of a sudden you have too much house, too much mortgage, too much car payments. They didn't think it out, and a lot of guys don't end up well in sports. It's a shame. It's a shame.
It is. Which I mean, that's It's Fats Domino. Ain't that a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, Fats Domino. He was great.
Yeah. So obviously, man, like there's two, I mean, pretty critically acclaimed projects that you worked on, and they were both involving wrestling. Going into it, and however way you want to answer, whichever one you want to answer first, 350 Days and The Wrestler. Um, Going in, like, what did you want to accomplish, and then coming out of it, what was the thing that you gained the most or learned the most?
I was an agent booking wrestlers. I had Johnny Valiant and Nikolai Volkov booked for an autograph appearance. And all of a sudden, the executive producer, the money guy, Scott Franklin's best buddy, walks in and he says, "Do you know Darren Aronofsky, the director?" I say, "I sure do. I'm a fan. Requiem for a Dream, Pie 3.14,
Right.
not apple pie.
Or
Pie.
American Pie.
Yeah, not American Pie." So, yeah, I said, "I'm a big fan and I'm well aware of him." And he said, "Well, Darren's doing a wrestling project." And he said, quote, "You guys would be perfect." So I give him my business card, don't hear anything for a couple of months. And all of a sudden, I get a call. And they said, "We'd like to meet with you guys. Bring whoever you want." So I bring Nikolai's shoot manager, legit manager, Nikita Brezhnikov, who was booking him on the indies, Tiger Khan, who wrestled for the Hearts up in Calgary,
Right.
and Johnny Valiant. So we all go to meet with them. And we're just eating and downing beers. And we were there for hours. And, Johnny was a stand-up comic and an actor also. And he had them laughing, and Nikolai's telling them road stories and charming them. By the end, it didn't even feel like a business meeting. It felt like a bunch of guys hanging out, having beers, And so I knew it went well, but again, months went by because Darren had other projects he was working on. And finally, I get a call from Scott Franklin, the executive producer, and he's like, "I'd like you to be the associate producer, the wrestling guy, the wrestling guy." I said, yeah, I'm not going to turn down an opportunity like this. So for 6 months before the actual filming, I was taking them on the road to wrestling events, anything wrestling related. And one day I took them to this convention in Jersey, and it felt like the WWE Hall of Fame. It was the Samoans, Moolah, Mae Young, Tony Atlas, Lou Albano, Johnny Valiant, etc., so on. But there was nobody there. It was like a graveyard. There were more wrestlers and vendors than fans. And Aronofsky's going, "Evan, where is everybody?" He felt bad for them. I felt bad for them. Iron Sheik's head was down on the table asleep. That's how bad it was. And I was helping with the scripts. I wasn't writing them. I was checking the wrestling content for authenticity. And next thing I know, Rob Siegel, the screenwriter, he added that scene to the script. It wasn't there before, And I'm on set one day when we're finally filming and we're doing the autograph scene. And it looked very antiseptic. Everything was neat and tidy. I said, "Darren, it wouldn't look like this at a convention. Every inch of the table is covered and, it's chaotic." So all of a sudden I'm doing set design and I'm just standing there watching as they prepare, these massive lights and everything. And he looks at me and he gets this smirk. He goes, "Evan, come here for a second." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Evan, I want you to talk to all the wrestlers in the scene, walk up to Mickey last, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid." And Mickey walks over to me, whispers in my ear. He goes, "Just improv it." He thinks I'm an actor. I've never acted in my life. I've never acted even in a high school play or nothing. So it's like surreal. No makeup, street clothes. All of a sudden I'm acting with Mickey Rourke. And the whole time I'm thinking, what do I say to him? Because we're improving it.
Right.
So I started the scene. I'm chatting with Manny Yarborough, who was an 800-pound black sumo.
Mm-hmm.
He wrestled for you. He fought for
You
UFC.
see, yeah, absolutely. He gets
Very
his teeth
early
knocked out.
UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah, Manny Yarborough. He was a friend of mine. And the only other actual wrestler was Johnny Valiant, and
Wow.
whose head was down, recreating what happened with the Iron Sheik. Everybody else in that scene, they were extras. So I walk up to Mickey, or Randy the Ram,
Ram, right?
walk up to him, and I'm thinking, what am I going to say? And I go, I loved you as a kid. I saw you at Madison Square Garden. Can I have your autograph? Which is exactly what I would say to any legend that, you know. And he looks at me and he's improving. He goes, what's your name? So now I'm thinking, and I just instinctively go, Evan. How surreal this is. I'm playing myself in a fictional movie. Utterly surreal. And Aronofsky runs over to me. He starts pounding me on the chest, going, that was great. That was great. And Johnny Valiant said to me, do you know your hand was shaking? I'm not an actor. I'm there in front of 150 people, giant cameras in my face. And I looked like an awestruck fan because I was legitimately nervous. This was not my element, acting in a film. The guy wins the Golden Globe and he's nominated for the Academy Award. There I am acting with the guy. You could be acting for 50 years. This may never happen to somebody.
Right.
It's just like, kismet. It was just magic. The whole thing was magic. And shoot ahead to the New York Film Festival, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. Lincoln Center, 2,300 people, sold out, $40 a ticket. And I'm sitting there with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And this was 2008. I'm sitting there and all of a sudden there's the scene with Randy the Ram and his daughter. And he goes, I'm just a broken down piece of meat. And I look around me and everybody's crying. Everybody's crying. And I'm like, man, this works. It works. We worked on this off and on for 7 years. I wasn't in the editing room. I'm watching it like any fan there. I hadn't seen the cut of it. And so it was really, one of the great experiences of my life. And Aronofsky's a wonderful guy. His mom's a New York City school teacher, or was at least. And, he was a regular guy. He wasn't like some rich kid with the nepotism and the cronyism. This guy made it on talent and drive. He had no connections, just he had his own style, his own vision. You watch Requiem for a Dream and the refrigerators, chasing the housewife around the apartment. It's wild. And even The Whale. I mean,
oh yeah,
Brendan Fraser won the Oscar.
Right.
You sit there, you're emotionally drained watching him. So Aronofsky, I'm not saying it because I know him. I'm saying it. The guy's a genius, and nothing but respect. And for 6 months, he said, Evan, I want to get this right. I want this to ring true. And that's why he had me. We were sitting in locker rooms on indie shows. He's picking King Kong Bundy's brain and Valentine and, all these, Nikolai, of course. I mean, he wanted it really to be a true depiction of this world. And I think when the smoke cleared, I think it works. And we're very proud of it. And I think 100 years from now, 200 years from now, just like Marlon Brando and On the Waterfront, when Brando goes, I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
When Mickey Rourke goes, I'm just a broken down piece of meat. I think people have the same reaction, and they'll be sitting in their living room crying, and it's, it means a lot to me. It's a little piece of, forever, it'll be there forever.
No, absolutely. And I mean, this is Everett Osmer, and I'm trying to bring the comment up on screen. But yeah, he said my favorite movie. That's
Thank you
it.
so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, we hear that sometimes, and I saw recently a list of great sports movies, and from a legitimate critic, and it was on there, and it meant a lot because yeah, I grew up on Pride of the Yankees and Brian's Song and all these
Yeah,
great sports films, and to be even mentioned with them really means something because at this point it's pushing 20 years. It's been out
yeah.
there a while, 2008. Yeah, so.
And unfortunately, it still rings true. Now it's a little bit better, right? But I mean, obviously, to kind of call back to what we were talking about earlier, meat and potatoes, kind of smash mouth style of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Now you have guys and girls that are better athletically inclined and taking better care of their bodies. There's not too much, they're in locker rooms playing PlayStation, Xbox rather than trading drugs. And that's a good thing, right? But then they take these wild bumps that each one of them, you want to talk about like football and a car crash happening every play. Well, every pay per view, every TV taping, somebody's going through a ladder, table, whatever, and it's the same thing. And you look at a guy like Darby Allin, and jeepers, like he's 150 pounds sopping wet. The straight edge doesn't take anything for it, and you're like, this is not going to end well. I don't know and then he's climbing. What was it like?
Mount Everest or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. And you're just like,
Maybe better off climbing mountains than taking bumps through glass panes.
yeah, well, I mean, one funds the other, right? One vice funds the other. But yeah, it's weird. And you were talking about like the UFC. We don't know what a 70-year-old MMA fighter looks like because we just don't have that data, right? I mean, you can go, maybe kickboxing and Sugarfoot and Don Dragon Wilson and all those guys or whatever. But it wasn't. There wasn't the grappling aspect of point kick boxing and karate and what have you. So I was there for Tito and Chuck 3 at the Forum here in LA, and Chuck wasn't moving well, man. And that was that. So he's nearing 60, maybe, right? So it's not going to look great, for a lot of these guys. So that's why it's not just the movie itself, right? It's the depiction and even your involvement in it and that scene. I mean, overall, right? But that scene, because it was you, it was something that you saw play out over and over, booking after booking, convention after convention, indie after indie. And that's you. And that's why it was so true to form because you were really on screen and outside of it, in the ring, out of it, an advocate for a lot of these guys where they don't have it.
And I get heat for it sometimes. I just had I won't even mention their names. Two podcasters, he's a nobody, and how could he write a book? And it's like I hear people say absurd things like WWE is my religion. Vince McMahon is my hero. He's an American hero, and I'm like, I wouldn't go that far. Now that the obscene ticket prices are kicking in, and I'm seeing people posting, I took a loan to go to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I'm making payments on my WrestleMania package after the fact, and I'm also seeing a lot of, I have to look my kid in the eye after taking them to matches, their whole childhood. I can't afford it anymore. I see more and more people saying this. So these are not heroes to me. These are greedy corporate vultures for the most part. And again, a lot of these guys do not end well. And just this week, you have mass layoffs after record-breaking profitable years. And these are ruthless corporations, and if you get heat for being critical of the corporation, like you're somehow the bad guy, I don't quite agree. But if you're saying things publicly long enough and often enough, you become a target of sorts. And I don't see Vince McMahon as any kind of hero, believe me. Um, the fact that he was a good promoter,
Yeah.
that he could promote Andre and Hogan as something special after they wrestled 50 times, prior. And after Andre had been slammed by innumerable guys, like, oh my God, can Hulk Hogan slam Andre? I mean, that's brilliant promoting, but that doesn't make him eligible for sainthood,
But some people will latch on to whatever they do, regardless of fact or fiction, and that's where we're at. Which, by the way, Devon Lewis of the Devon Lewis Show says, "Hey, Adam and Evan, great interview so far. Hope you're having a great day. We hope you guys are
Thank you
doing."
so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but it's kind of crazy, right? Where, yeah, you see people getting title belts, and I'm a belt mark, right? The 10 pounds of gold, Sweet Charlotte. I've got a replica of that. The old inmate AWA championship. I think that's great. I think not Nick Bockwinkel, both in and out of the ring, better than Flair. I might be in the
Bockwinkel
minority.
was great. I
Yeah.
saw Bockwinkel in his 50s wrestling back in the 1980s. He was still great. Still great.
Oh yeah. His matches with Henning, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Henning, a father of Larry the Axe, and those things. I mean, realistically, you kind of take the '80s part out of it and just watch the match, much like Sayama and Dynamite, right? Tiger Mask and Dynamite, they still hold up. They really do.
Yeah. Great is great, no matter what era. And I'm not one of these guys who does there's been no good wrestling since the territories. I still love wrestling. I mean, I watch AEW and I watch the WWE pay-per-views, and I go to indies and etc. so on. I think Will Ospreay's an artist. Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland is great. Hangman Page is great. In WWE, Cody's excellent. Reigns, when he has his working boots on. Charlotte is great. I mean, there's some great wrestling today. To say, oh, they're all just spot monkeys, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I even like Lucha, and so, oh, they're all just standing outside waiting for them to jump on the guy. And I'm like, you had no problem with the Undertaker or Kane like rising from the dead and doing like these silly angles and gimmicks. It's suspension of disbelief,
Yeah.
Like watching a movie. You have an action film, and 2,000 bullets are coming at the guy. Nothing hits him. It's suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, no, it's hyperbole, and it's where you want it to be, right? And yeah, Devon says, "Yep, agreed, 100%." Which, I mean, you can't, what other people do, right? And what they kind of become fanatics of. It's weird, right? Because humans, that's human nature. We become tribalist, right? And like, oh, WWE versus AEW, and I don't like Lucha. Well, now AWA, I mean AAA is a part of the WWE, which might be part of the problem. I don't know. We'll see how that one shakes out, because they're running Worlds Collide at man, I mean, my adopted hometown of Inglewood, California, they literally ripped out a Church's Chicken to build Intuit Dome, and that's where that's going to be. And actually, AAA Oz Worlds Collide will be at the Forum, and literally like on the same street. So we have it where the Forum is on one side, and literally this is maybe a quarter of a mile, right? So Forum, SoFi Stadium, right, where WrestleMania 39 was. And then across from that is the Intuit Dome. So we've got $1 billion, like all on one row. It's kind of maddening, and traffic's a mess, but that's kind of where we are, which also, in terms of the ticket prices, Lucha traditionally is a walk-up business, right? And they won't sell any pre-sale or anything like that. And that traces back to Mexico and what have you. Well, what is that going to change, selling out the Forum, right? Now we don't have walk-up business because the tickets are just so priced out for Lucha.
It's funny. We have a little Lucha show coming to Queens later this month, and in June. And it's like $55, which is not cheap, but that's not, 3 figures or 4 figures or 5 figures like WWE pay-per-views. So even Lucha, the price is sneaking up. So but they say they pack the place for the shows there. It's a mostly Hispanic audience in a Queens neighborhood that leans towards Hispanic population. So they draw. They fly in the guys from Mexico.
Right.
I love lucha. The best indie match I saw in the past quarter century, I saw Pentagon against Phoenix
Oh, wow.
at this venue that I'm talking about. And it was so great that the fans were throwing money into the ring.
Yeah.
It was wild. The ring was covered in money. And I said, this is one of the greatest matches I ever saw. And, you know, the heat was unbelievable and they were unbelievable. And I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, they're just spot monkeys. That's ridiculous. They said the same thing with Ring of Honor. I used to see Bryan Danielson against Nigel McGuinness.
Wow.
That was like Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe. That was like Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat. Flair and Steamboat was the greatest match I ever saw live. But I'm telling you, Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness was amazing. I saw it 4 times live, and these guys are artists. To dismiss them, oh, they're not selling. You know, they couldn't have actually seen these matches if they're saying nonsense like that. You know.
Yeah, but it's again that fanatic kind of mentality is like you like what you like and you'll crap on everything else that isn't, right? I mean, there's stuff that I like, and I like deathmatch when Funk and Cactus were doing it, and Onita and FMW Hayabusa,
Me
right?
too.
Which,
I like.
right?
I could watch a death match. What happens is a buddy of mine, Low Life Louis Ramos, is a hardcore wrestler, and I brought a Necro Butcher to the wrestler. I enjoy this stuff, but what happens is I sit there and like half my brain is going, this is horrible, and the other half is going, this is great.
Yeah,
You know?
you kind of have to do that. I remember, I think maybe the first GCW that I went to. I mean, there was a death match, but top of the card on the marquee was Jonathan Gresham versus Minoru Suzuki, and maybe one of the reasons why I'm divorced is because I went out during COVID to see this match, because I'm a technical wrestling aficionado, and I was just like, Suzuki and Grisham, sign me up, like, let's go. Vaya con Dios, my marriage, but but it happens, you know. Which I mean, you kind of alluded to it, you know, some of the greatest matches that you've seen live, right? So, obviously, you know, I don't engage in like greatest of all time or, you know, GOAT conversations, just because we don't know what, if you're saying all time, that's of all time. We don't know what's going to be in 10, 15, 20 years. We just have up to right now, right?
Plus, you haven't seen every match of all time, you know?
Yeah, Luthez is, if he's not on your greatest list, then to me, it's invalid. Like, I'm sorry, it is.
I was at the Meadowlands when they had that Old Timers Battle Royale, and the last 2 guys were Luthez and Pat O'Connor, and they're going hold for hold, you know, and I'm just marking out, like, you know, and sadly, it was not crowded. The WWF fans of that era, I believe that was 1987, they didn't know from these guys, you know. To me, it's like, oh my God, they got, you know, all these guys who I had not seen live, Edouard Carpentier, Dick the Bruiser, they were all in this battle royale, and you know, it was like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And you go there and the place is 2/3 empty because the fans were oblivious. It was a different crowd. But Thez and O'Connor going hold for hold, move for move, and Thez won. And it was just great to say I saw Lou Thez wrestle live, even though he was much older, obviously, at the time. But it was. So over the years, the greatest matches I saw live.
Yeah, matches, wrestlers, any way you want to go.
I would, and again, this is from the heart. This is in Billy Graham and Bruno. The building would shake. And some. They just punched and kicked. No, that wasn't the way I experienced it as a kid. Okay. Sergeant Slaughter and Iron Sheik boot camp matches. I saw that twice, different arenas. That was unbelievable. Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask, Eddie Gilbert and Terry Funk. Oh my God, those were great matches on the Indies, Jersey Indies. Mick Foley and Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert
Oh.
was amazing. Trying to think. Like I said, Nigel and Brian Danielson was amazing. Flair and Steamboat at the Meadowlands, 35 minutes, greatest match I ever saw live. Art.
Wow.
Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express. Art. Every time you saw them, unbelievable matches. Ivan Koloff and Bruno. Koloff was amazing, just amazing. People tend to forget, it's hard to put yourself in a seat 50 years ago if you weren't there.
Right.
But that was the middle of the Cold War, and he had the perfect gimmick. Every James Bond movie, James Bond's fighting the Russians. It was a different time. And there's Ivan Koloff, doing the fake Russian accent. The guy was from Canada.
Yeah. French Canadian, I believe, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. So Ivan Koloff and Bruno was amazing live. Abdullah the Butcher and Brody was amazing to experience. War Games, NWA War Games. Yeah. To see those live in Philly at the Nassau Coliseum.
Oh, man.
I tell people the greatest live wrestling I ever saw was the NWA mid to late 80s. Because you had Flair on top, you had the Horsemen, you had the Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express. Mid-card, you had Billy Graham and Jimmy Valiant, guys who were headlining in WWF. Mid-card, okay? Then lower on the card, you had Rick Rude, Manny Fernandez.
Raging Bull.
Amazing. It was every show. To this day, there wasn't one WrestleMania that topped most of those $10, $15, $20 NWA house shows. They've never topped it. Not wrestling-wise, spectacle-wise, sure. But, yeah. Oh, I can't forget Piper and Snooker. Snooker at the Garden. I mean, Piper would come out, and for the next 8, 10, 12 minutes, whatever it would be, you couldn't breathe. It was so exciting. It was like chaos, chairs, blood, in and out of the ring, chaos. And then it would suddenly be over and you would go, like you could breathe again. Heel Piper. Face Piper was not on the level of heel Piper, believe me. Yeah. Heel Piper was unbelievable. Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler was great. I went down to Memphis. I saw the Moondogs against Lawler and Jarrett. That was a wild brawl. I saw Flair and Wahoo in a cage in Florida. That was great. I saw Sullivan's Army in Florida. Yeah. I would hit the territories back then. So to experience some of it. And it's a shame the territories went the way of the dinosaur, and that was Vince, greedily absorbing everything. But to go to the Mid-South Coliseum to see Lawler on top and the Moondogs, and that was 92. They were already,
aging out. Yeah.
They weren't quite what Memphis was prior, but it was still great. Great. And and then I used to go to ECW in Philly.
Oh, no way.
Philly, yeah. The Gangsters, Public Enemy, there was nothing like, you could say it's just punching and kicking and hitting guys with stuff, but the Gangsters coming out with that music, it was like chaos. It was like the heat was off the charts. It was unbelievable. And, I think there's like a certain snobbishness with wrestling. Like, that wasn't great wrestling, but it was a great experience to be sitting there and watching that. I mean, and then they brought it. Oh, so among the greatest matches ever, Terry Funk and Sabu. Oh my God!
Oh, what?
Those two guys together. It was amazing. It was just amazing. So yeah, Sabu took wrestling to a different place. Unfortunately, he didn't make the money he should have in the business. But Sabu and Terry Funk live. Oh my God, that was incredible. Oh, I would.
Yes.
You know what's going to happen after we wrap this up later? I'm going to think of 10 other ones.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh, and my YouTube history is just gonna
yeah,
all of the matches.
yeah. Flair, Terry Funk, I quit. I was there. I was there.
What?
Flair and Terry Funk, I quit. That was amazing live. Amazing. And Flair and Barry Windham live was incredible. Incredible. Prime Barry Windham was so great. He's actually underrated.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, I don't like the old, materialistic Ric Flair, today. But for the fans who do every match was the same, every Flair match was the same. Absolutely not. You weren't there. Believe me. If Flair was wrestling a great wrestler like Wyndham or Steamboat, it was not the same as him wrestling a big muscle guy like Nikita Koloff
Or Luger.
a Luger or one of the Road Warriors. It was not the same match. The guy wrestled long matches, so he did some of the same spots. Anybody does that. Any WWE wrestler you watch is going to do the same couple of spots, but it was not the same match. Seeing Flair and El Gigante was not seeing Flair and Terry Funk, believe me. So some of these fanboy myths are really diminish these guys' careers, and it's a shame because fans will regularly do, oh, he was just a jobber. I go, no, you're dead wrong because you don't know the guy's history. Like let's say Baron Cicluna, for example. I said, no, Baron Cicluna wrestled Bruno at the Garden. Baron Cicluna was a WWF Tag Team Champion. Baron
when it meant something.
Yeah, he wrestled all over the world and headlined. Late in his career, he settled down and he lost fairly regularly, but he was not just a jobber his entire career. And there was some great wrestlers under Vince who were losing regularly. Butcher Paul Vachon and Jerry Valiant. And these guys were champions and headliners in other territories. And you can't just diminish somebody's career because you don't know their history. And when you repeat something enough and enough and enough, somebody goes, they'll go, Johnny Rodz was just a jobber. No, Johnny Rodz was a champion in Puerto Rico, tag champion, and respected enough to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, and a tremendous wrestler. You like technicians. I saw Johnny Rodz wrestle Billy Robinson at the Garden. It was a clinic. Yeah, in the 70s. Johnny was great. Tremendous.
Yeah, so every time, because this is wild to say, but former UFC heavyweight champion Josh the War Master Barnett is a friend and a student of Billy Robinson, and that's all I will ask him. And if you've seen Bloodsport, I mean, that is my favorite type of wrestling, so like it's shoot, work, what have you, but I mean, it has you enthralled.
Billy Robinson was tremendous. What's interesting to me is I think a lot of younger fans today, I don't think they could even watch some of these 70s guys and appreciate it. They would go, oh, this is boring. I think they're so used to the Flair and Blackjack Mulligan. Yeah, I used to see Blackjack Mulligan against Andre at the Garden. Mulligan. I saw the Blackjacks in the 70s. They were man, I love wrestling. I don't love the high prices. I don't love that on a 3-hour Raw. There's 40 minutes of wrestling or whatnot. I think there's been some negative changes along the way, but it's like a smorgasbord. You could just watch the best matches from each promotion and enjoy it, and you don't have to watch every minute of every show. I don't watch every boxing match on TV. I still love boxing,
Yeah, which, I mean, kind of begs the question, and I kind of this thought rattles in my head a lot, right? So now, WWE and UFC are one, right? And PBR and AAA, right? But Ari Emanuel, the literal principal reason why Ari Gold from Entourage, Jeremy Piven's character, exists is right.
Watch Entourage,
Yeah, so now they're owned by a Hollywood titan. So do you think that maybe, like some sort of compensation a la a SAG-AFTRA card comes to wrestling because of the Hollywood, I mean, integration now? Do you foresee that?
No, because I think a lot of wrestlers, not all, but many are intrinsically selfish. And if they're making millions of dollars, they're not going to fight for the guys, below them. And, if you're walking away with millions of dollars a year, why are you shaking the boat, or whatever the term is,
Rocking the
rocking the
boat,
boat?
yeah.
Why are you rocking the boat? Because you're doing great. So I don't see them banding together. And like when Jesse Ventura was fighting for a union, he said Hogan snitched them out. So, you know,
Which charts?
what's that?
Which it charts. Hogan's character, it charts. It's not hyperbole.
I'm not a huge Hogan fan, but
Yeah.
you should be doing something better than hustling beer, to your audience.
It's all he's got left, right? Much like Flair. I mean, you've kind of
selling autographs for $425 a pop. I'm sure he has plenty of money.
Oh my goodness! You know the story at the Cow Palace? They had a convention. I mean, this had to be over a decade ago, but they had a wrestling convention at the Cow Palace. Actually, this is the one where Luger, flew out to and ended up becoming paralyzed. But they had it there, and I think Hogan was on the elevator, and just with some fans that were going to the convention anyway. And Hogan pulled out early, and they asked him for an autograph, and he priced them right there in the elevator. But Austin, who was there, and he, I think he was like newly retired within a year or two of that Seattle WrestleMania with The Rock or whatever, and he stood in line. I don't think he was even advertised, and he just signed autographs. And to me, one would argue like one is a star. This is what you should pay me for. But like, look at Austin. All the metrics that you adjusted for time period or whatever that Hogan did, Austin also did, and maybe even superseded that, right? So what's with Hogan, and
greedy.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a one-word answer. Look, I used to stand outside the Garden as a kid and wait for autographs, and man, for the most part, everybody signed except Andre and Dusty would never sign for us kids. Never. But Billy Graham would come out friendly as could be. George Steele, Lou Albano, Grand Wizard. The heels would all sign. It smartened us up as a kid. Wait a second. The good guys aren't signing for us, and these guys are signing. So, it was not the business that it's become now. It was just many times in the arenas themselves, they'd stand in the ring and sign before the match while they were waiting. So it was a different world back then, and it's much more mercenary now. But The Undertaker, who's on the fans' good list, he did an appearance at his comedy show where they were selling toast with The Undertaker. $2,073 to have a toast with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how greedy can you be? Come on.
I mean, and that was, they did that run here in LA at during WrestleMania 39, and that was the first and the last WrestleMania that I want to ever go to. And most people, think about the people that have to travel from around the world to attend WrestleMania. I literally, where SoFi Stadium was the old Hollywood Park Casino where I used to do ROTC events and stuff like that. And the Rat Pack used to hang out back in the 50s and what have you. So that was on the ashes of that Hollywood Casino is SoFi Stadium, right? So like I literally stayed in my hometown to attend a WrestleMania, and everything was so cheap. Now, luckily for me, I called in, I got good brothered, and I went to both nights of WrestleMania and NXT for free. It's not horrible, but again, I'm a townie, right? So, but I can only imagine for people that love and whatever that like the accrued prices to go to. Even on 39, which is now what 2-3 years old, to do everything, and this is just the WWE stuff, you're out 10 G's.
The Madison Square Garden recent WWF WWE, I should say, house show. Um, Tickets on top in the nosebleeds was $63, and ringside was $1,010. So do the math. Even at $63, if you're mom, dad, and two kids,
Yeah.
you're looking at easy $300, $400, $500 by the time you're done with parking and food and merch, and so it becomes a graduation present or a Christmas present. They book the Garden December 26th every year. It becomes a Christmas present
Right.
or some kind of special event, as opposed to a blue collar monthly. When I was a kid, we would go to Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum, Westchester County Center, Sunnyside Garden. You could go every week. It was $3, $4, $5, $6, $7. We're sitting at the Garden one night, and ringside was $6. And they make an announcement, because this is a blue collar crowd. This isn't a money crowd. So they go, we have to announce that on the next show, the tickets will be $7 ringside. And it was like a dead silence went over the place. Like they traumatized, because that $1 meant something. My father never broke 25 grand in his life, in the 1970s. So it was a different audience. It was a different experience. And basically they were blue collar marks. And the wrestling was geared towards the different ethnic groups. You had the Polish strongman Ivan Putski. You had the Italian superhero Bruno. You had Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson. You had the Puerto Rican champions Pedro Morales, Rivera, etc. So on. Irish Davey O'Hannon. Every Irish guy had the word Irish in front of him. No, really, that's the way it would be in the Irish Pat Barrett, Irish Davey O'Hannon. It was a blue collar ethnic crowd, and they knew their audience. And people also forget, you would have guys like Baron von Raschke, Hans Schroeder, Waldo von Erich. They come to the Garden, and half the audience fought these guys in World War II. This was the 70s. This wasn't, this wasn't a huge, this is 25, 30 years later. So, they believed, this guy's a Nazi. He's trying to kill Bruno, you know? So it was a whole different experience. And the fans are almost too smart today. And they, after the 500th wrestling book and the 5,000th shoot interview, they think they understand it all, but they really don't. When I have indie guys say to me, I had 14 concussions. I'm thinking of making a comeback. What do you think? And I go, I think you shouldn't. You want to recognize your kids. You're not going to make any real money on the indies. I'm talking to them as a friend. But they don't understand, they feel alive in the ring. The wrestling promotion is a surrogate family. They're on the road with these guys. And I understand. I've gone up and down the roads as an agent, even doing some heel managing. You go up and down the roads and you bond with people, and you're sitting at the pancake place 3 a.m. and and it's great times, but it doesn't mean they have a great end, a lot of them. And, something really needs to be done to take care of some of these guys. And your question before, I don't think you're ever going to get a union. If you think about it, on a Raw or SmackDown or even AEW, they're doing skits, they're acting, they're doing comedy, they're doing... I think they should have benefits as a quote unquote TV star on primetime TV programs, but nobody's fighting for it. And I just think many of these guys, they're going to end up with nothing. Sadly, especially the indie guys. I've heard indie guys say to me, "I've never gotten paid. Nothing." The old joke is, a hot dog and a handshake. and maybe the promoter graciously gives them $25 for gas and tolls, So, but some of them have said to me, I've never been paid. I just love being in there. And I understand. I mean, it's a rush being in front of a crowd or whatnot. And I have friends who are stand-up comedians. I have friends who are singers. I have friends who are actors. I have friends who are teachers. You need to be in front of that audience. And if not, you don't feel complete. You don't feel, that's where your heart and soul is. You're following your muse. But I would not recommend being crippled where, you destroy your body, where 14 concussions or whatnot.
Yeah.
Homicide just retired. He's got brain issues he put out publicly. Homicide's tremendous, underrated wrestler.
Oh yeah.
I know him. I followed him since he was a kid. He wrestled out of the Doghouse. Bobby Lombardi, the promoter, Brooklyn, Queens border, and he's been out there 30 years. And he actually said, "I have to retire. There's something going on in his brain." The doctors are telling him. So I mean, I'm not gossiping. He put that out publicly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, man, it's a tough business. Still is, always will be.
Unfortunately.
Drew McIntyre, who's very successful, doing very well. He said, when they throw me through the air and I land, I'm in pain. And the point he was making is, we're portraying quote unquote characters, but pain is real, gravity is real,
right?
Wear and tear on the human body is real, and surgery after surgery after surgery, some of these guys, and it's a lot of us are never going to sacrifice like these guys have, and women.
The dark side of the ring have become kind of a water cooler talk over the last couple of years. And I absolutely loved Sherry Martel, and to see her story, and it's very reminiscent of her relationship with her son. It's very reminiscent and eerie to Whitney Houston and Bobby Christina, right? Because it's his
daughter ended up dying.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sherry Martel's son isn't doing well. He's got
a sort of cancer. Fall out of your chair, but the audio on that episode was from an interview I did with her. Check the credits on that episode.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. I interviewed her 3 a.m. at WBAI FM 99.5, very famous New York, 50,000 watt New York City station. I was on there 16 years, and we're interviewing her. Literally, the show was 3 to 5 in the morning, and it was in the middle of that show. And she said to me, "I never saw my kid grow up. I was on the road 15 years, and it always stuck with me." And when they announced they were doing the episode, we worked it out where that audio would be on there, because she was gone before shoot interviews were the norm. Right. They didn't have a ton of interview footage with her. So I have to be in the mood for Dark Side of the Ring, because I've met these people and known some of these people, and it's painful. It's painful. It's like some of the best nights of my life was seeing the Road Warriors, and you saw that episode, and both these guys are gone, and they didn't live to a ripe old age, and etc. So on. It's a lot. Some of those episodes are rough.
They are, but much like the wrestlers and the wrestler in 350 days, it is an accurate portrayal. Even though even some of the guys who have portrayed some of the wrestlers on Dark Side of the Ring have sadly passed away. Which, is that art imitating life or life imitating art? It's eerie nonetheless, But it's just. As much as you love it, you hate it. Like, I struggle, with it internally and emotionally. Like, I love this thing, what do you do when the thing doesn't love not just you as the fan with the priced out and being tickets, but also your heroes that you watch and what have you? And, whether it's something that they did, the promoter did, or what have you, when they live to ripe old ages, it's not kind. You look at Vince, you look at Snuka, you look at Moolah, and it's just, it's rough.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of sad stories in the business. At the very end, they needed GoFundMe's to save Kamala's house, to save
Mhm.
Paul Orndorff's house. You know, I was on the road with Paul Orndorff. I was friendly with Kamala. Right? You know these guys as an agent. Even if we booked Paul Orndorff for a WrestleCon, and lovely guy. But at the end, he had a little Alzheimer's. He was forgetful, and yeah, Snooker too. At the end, that brother stuff was partly because he didn't remember anybody's name. It was
Wow.
yeah. So it was, and they're also realizing now these guys took God knows how many chair shots to the head back in the
Right.
day. Nobody really thought anything of it back then. So Lanny Poffo was a dear friend of mine, and when I booked him, he would crash on my couch, and he was very health conscious, and he died at 69 years old,
Yeah.
and we were just stunned. But think about it. These guys wrestled in smoke-filled arenas. These
Yeah.
guys were carrying a lot of weight. Even Lanny did steroids briefly when he was on Top versus Hogan. You don't know the damage all of this does. You're in a different time zone every other day. It's not a lifestyle conducive to longevity. You don't hear an awful lot of wrestlers in their 90s.
No.
It's exceedingly rare. Maybe 70s and 80s some. It's
And
not it's
tops.
not a huge list. It catches up to you. And even Nikolai was a health fanatic, and but at one point he was carrying 340 pounds. That's not healthy on the heart.
No.
It's so one way or the other, this stuff catches up to you. And Nikolai called me from his hospital bed a few days before he died, and he said, "Evan, they cleared up an infection. I'm getting out of here." And his wife found him dead in bed. A couple of days later. So I wrote a book, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. It's 100+ stories, and it came out earlier this year. And I tell some of these stories. It's not all wrestling. It's also making the movie The Wrestler, working on other projects, teaching over the years. It's 100 stories on my experiences, and some of them are funny and some of them are tragic. And one story in there, I booked Johnny Valiant for an autograph appearance in Philly, and we're about to get on this little puddle jumper 20-seater from Philly to New York, this airplane, and it's 9/11/2003, 2 years
Whoa.
to the day after 9/11, so it's still fresh on people's mind.
Right.
And the pilot looked like Lee Van Cleef. He
Oh my
looked
goodness.
rough. He looked rough. He looked like every guy like Chuck Norris would be like killing,
Kicking it. Yeah.
when he's killing terrorists, So Johnny was hilarious. He whispers to me, "Did you see this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are we getting on this plane?" I go, "I guess we have to," So these little planes, you feel a lot of turbulence. So at one point, the plane's like shaky, and I'm like, "Johnny, are you gonna have to body slam this guy? Are we going into the ocean?" you know. So there's some funny stuff in there. Obviously, that didn't happen, and the
Right.
guy just looked
Thankfully.
rough. But yeah, man, it's Johnny used to say, "Enjoy the ride, enjoy the ride." But Johnny also said to me, the Valiant brothers were the #1 tag team in the world. And then as a manager, he was managing Beefcake and Valentine
Right.
and other teams. He said, "I never broke 100 grand in wrestling. Never broke 100 grand."
Oh my God.
And again, every day, road expenses, taxes, sending money to support a family back home. This is what people do not grasp. If you're on TV, you're rich. You know, even the wrestler, none of us
Yeah.
got quote unquote rich from it. It was a
Yeah.
$6 million indie film. We wanted 18 million for the budget. We couldn't even get that because Mickey's star had waned at the time. So
Wow.
we got $6 million, and that would be like the food budget on the Avengers
Yeah. No,
or
100%.
Spider-Man
Jesus.
or whatnot. Yeah, so it's people don't understand that not, but the big stars, guys like Reigns and Cody, are making big money today.
Yeah.
That's a different story. Yeah.
I mean, it's pro and con, good and bad. It's stark. It's really stark and dark. That's it.
Well, look, we were talking before the show about the music business.
Yeah.
You could stream 1 million songs on some platform, and these guys get a check for 2 figures, 3 figures, 4 figures. Nothing. I mean, it's not much different with movies on these platforms. So the artists generally get exploited, and there's some great indie artists out there who they pave their own road, and they'll play major cities all over the world once or twice a year in mid-size venues or major clubs, but they're not making Beyonce money or
Right.
Rolling Stones money by any means. It's a tough road out there. I know blues artists who you get 1 or 2 gigs canceled on the tour, and they have to cancel the tour. That's how tight it is. It's money wise.
And the venues themselves, those mid-sized venues, are also hurting too because they're getting crushed out the rate of what is it, Live Nation and Ticketmaster and what have you. So like, everybody's getting caught in the middle of something.
I was a club booker. I booked musicians into a Greenwich Village venue maybe 10 years ago for a couple of years, and it was a blast. But then, the rents are obscene, and everything's another charge, another license, paying staff, and they're hanging by a shoestring. And then we had floods in New York, and the place was closed for like 3 weeks, and that was it. They couldn't survive. Losing that 3 weeks of income, that was the difference between hanging in there and closing shop. So,
so unfortunate.
Yeah, the arts are tough, sports are tough, and this is a generalization, but there's validity to it. Basically, if you're an athlete or an artist, 90% will never pay the bills doing that, and they have to have their day gig. 5% will pay the bills but will not get rich, and then there's that 3, 4, 5% who are going to hit the big time, and that's pretty much the reality of it. And the numbers may be even worse than that. I'm just doing
100%.
I'm doing ballpark figures. The average actor is making 15, 20 grand a year if that's all he or she is doing. So many, I know people that have had best-selling books, classics, and they're teaching writing at the college level. I know jazz masters who are teaching at universities because they're not making it on the gigs. They're not making it on the book sales. An author gets 10% of most book sales. So if the book's $20, you're getting $2. It's not a windfall by any, unless you're Stephen King or somebody on top that could work out a much better
John
deal.
Grisham,
Yeah, exactly. So people have to stop with they're all rich, and they're a lot of corporate apologists out there, and it's very disappointing, especially with young people, because my generation, it's like you fight the man, you don't want to be the man,
right?
No, really, it's and now it's like they want to be the man, they want to be the guy, with the private jet or whatnot, and
it's the Flair mentality.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to separate your heroes from their politics and their, the art. You separate the art from the artist, the art
Right.
from the person. Um, you know, Clint Eastwood's very right wing, but you can't take away the fact that the guy's made great movies. You
Yeah.
know, you know,
Ted Nugent, Catch
yeah,
Scratch Fever, but I
yeah,
mean,
he's a hell of a
his
guitarist.
wife.
He's a hell of a
Yeah.
guitarist.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, this is funny. I saw Morrissey, who has very
Yeah.
right wing,
Yeah.
and I'm an old school New York City Jewish liberal, So my friends are warning me. I don't know about Morrissey. Why are you going to see Morrissey? And it was a great concert. He didn't
Yeah.
mention politics once. The
Yeah.
guy's a showman. The guy's a showman. So some of my musical heroes have done some pretty horrible things. I mean, if you understand the history of music, Ike Turner's right there at the beginning.
Yeah. What is
That's
it? Rocket 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rocket 88.
Yeah.
Right. So I go to see Ike Turner at Summer Stage in Central Park. It was like, I'm waiting for his autograph because I know how important this guy is as far as music history. And this guy could have run for president. He's kissing babies. He's hugging people. The guy couldn't have been any nicer.
Right.
But that the movie
Tina,
did him in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was legitimacy to the movie. This guy was no Boy Scout, but
but a lot of those guys and girls weren't. I mean, that's why. What's her name? Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Right. That's because you don't hear a bad thing about her, but she was in the church.
She was playing rock guitar back then.
But even that was devilish for the time, right?
Yeah. So my mother used to go to the Apollo, and she said she would see Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Sam Cooke with the Soul Stirrers, all these legendary acts. She said people would get so worked up they would faint in the audience. They would actually faint, and they had nurses on call. And so I in the book, there's a lot of music in the book also. I tell a story. There are basically 100 short stories in the book. So I go to see Roger Troutman and Zapp. And where, pray tell? At the World Trade Center. They used to have concerts every day in the summer. Free concerts. So Roger Troutman and Zapp are there, and I'm a huge fan. And I wait for him. My friend had taken a beautiful picture of him. We had seen him at the Roxy in LA, prior to this. And so I'm waiting for the guy, and he couldn't be any nicer. The guy was so nice.
Yeah.
And he's like, wow, what a beautiful picture. And I said, I have one for you. You can keep it. And the guy was so gracious, and he signs the other one for me. And I walk out of there, and I'm like floating on air. The concert, as great a showman as you'll ever see, Roger Troutman.
Yeah.
And Zapp.
Yeah. Could play each other's instruments.
Oh, yeah. Tremendous. Out of Ohio. Yeah. A lot of great R&B acts out of Ohio. So the punchline to the story is it was a perfect day. Beautiful weather, great concert. He was great. And I said, you would never imagine how tragic it would all end. They blew up the World Trade Center. He gets into an argument with his brother. His brother shoots him to death. 4 minutes later, his brother kills himself realizing what he had done. I said, somebody would have put me and locked me up if I ever said anything that crazy.
Yeah.
Because it was a perfect day. That's really the punchline to the story. And and there's another story in there which reminds me, because it was very poignant. I go to see Richard Pryor in the 90s, and he wasn't well. He was sick already. So he's playing this mid-sized venue. It's called Westbury Music Fair. And he had giant cue cards in front of him, giant cue cards. And he was seated because he was walking like herky-jerky, like he wasn't walking well. And he was like, he did a 45-minute set. And we used to go see him in the movie theaters. He would do 2-hour, in the 70s.
Yeah.
He was like the god of comedy, Pryor. So the show ends, and it was really mediocre. You know, he was a shell of himself, and everybody rose to give him a standing ovation. And as he walked out, everybody was touching him
Yeah.
because we knew it was over. We knew it was the end because it was public that he was ill. You know, like, and you could see he was struggling just to walk from the stage to the stage door, and it was really it was, if something could be terrible and beautiful at the same time,
That's
was
that.
it. That was it. And yeah, so I tell these stories. I was at Madison Square Garden. It's all in the book. I was at Madison Square Garden, December 8, 1980. Do you know what day that was?
No, was that the? That's not the era.
You'll know in a second.
Okay.
Bruno's wrestling Sergeant Slaughter on top. Slaughter was great heel. Backlund was in Japan. Rare Garden card that Backlund missed. So the headline was Bruno and Slaughter. Great bloody brawl. We leave the Garden. It's about 11 o'clock at night. And this is, 34th Street, Manhattan. And I walk out within seconds. There's a real bad vibe in the air. Something's wrong. I could feel it. Everybody's murmuring, huddled together. I walk up to a complete stranger. And usually in New York, you don't walk up to strangers,
right?
Because you're safety conscious. But the guy looked like GQ, like a lawyer or a Wall Street guy or whatnot. I walk up to him. I go, "What happened?" Those are my exact words. "What happened?" He goes, "John Lennon was just shot." December 8, 1980.
Wow.
He just happened coincidentally to be at wrestling at the Garden. And again, no internet, no cell phones, no nothing. By the time I took the subway home, turned on the news, he was dead. And the first reaction was, I was ashamed that it happened in New York, because he always had that New York T-shirt, and
right.
He really embraced New York. I'm like, wow, what a black eye on our city that he had to die here. You know, and we were at 33rd Street. He died up. It was in the 70s. It wasn't that far away. You could literally walk it. That's how, it was like 40 or so blocks away. So, yeah, man. So in my life, a lot of good, bad, and ugly. And I tell these stories, and musically, the stuff I've experienced, Al Green's right on the cover. He's my favorite all-time live performer. I see Al Green, 1975, and he whipped the women into such a frenzy that they stormed the stage past the security. All of a sudden, he was swamped. The security couldn't stop them. You couldn't even see him. He was swamped by the women. This was 1975, pretty much at his peak. Right before he went gospel,
Right.
And I used to go see him do full gospel concerts after that. He wouldn't do his hits. He would only do gospel. I saw Little Richard do a gospel concert. He went through that phase also.
Yeah.
Al Green today will do both.
But, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the Al Green one, talk about a tragedy, man. You talk about the fever of, the females, right? That patroned him, and
they scalded him with the grits.
Grits Green, yeah, and then kills herself, seeing what she did, that's
she killed herself right after that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. A girlfriend of his was jealous, and she threw hot grits on him, and then she killed himself. And he had third-degree burns, and it was very serious.
And that's how he went to gospel,
Yeah. I went down to Al Green's church in Memphis. That's in the book. And it was unbelievable. It was like seeing the greatest 4-hour concert you've ever seen. And this homeless guy walks in off the street, and Al Green anoints him with the holy water and, saves him, and the whole deal. And it was so emotional, and I'm Jewish. I'm watching it as a music fan, And it was amazing. And there's a documentary, The Gospel According to Al Green, that's shot in his church, and it's great. this guy, what a great live performer.
Still,
especially in his peak. I mean, now he's very heavy. Now you wouldn't
yeah,
even
yeah, yeah.
recognize him.
He's like Slick. He looks like Slick.
Yeah, yeah, he's very heavy. But I used to go see James Brown, Al Green, George Clinton, Kid Creole and the Coconuts. Some of the greatest nights of my life, seeing some of these bands live. Every year, like clockwork, I'd go see the Isley Brothers, Bobby Womack. I mean, Bobby Womack. Oh my
Oh, if you
God.
think you're lonely now, wait until tonight.
Bobby
Oh,
Womack live was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Spinners, OJs, in their prime. I'm talking 70s, 80s.
Jesus.
Yeah, James Brown, nothing touched James Brown. If you watch Al Green is like, apples and oranges, different
Right.
style of music. But I saw George Clinton with the Mothership. You know what's unbelievable? Sun Ra.
Really?
Sun Ra's orchestra. Yeah, George borrowed from Sun Ra. Sun Ra was doing the space stuff in the 50s.
Right. Yeah.
Sun Ra was unbelievable. Virtuoso musicians, John Gilmore, the sax player. So, Sun Ra, unbelievable. The showmanship and ahead of his time. He was doing music videos in the 1950s.
50s, yeah.
This guy was so ahead of his time. And the band's still out there. They lived like a commune together in Philly. They lived in the same building. And they just, they practiced all day, hit the road, printed their own records. These guys were indie artists before there was like even a name for it. They were so ahead of the time. And today, honestly, I'd rather go to a concert than a wrestling match because the wrestling is very uneven. Like I love AEW, I love Ospreay, but you go to a card and you're sitting there for 4 or 5 hours and 2 or 3 of the matches really grab you, and it's a long slog.
Slog, yeah.
Especially the pay-per-views. But I went to Ring of Honor Final Battle. That was fun. I hadn't been in there. They actually announced at the Hammerstein Ballroom, Manhattan Center, whatever. They actually announced they hadn't been there in 8 years.
Wow.
You don't realize how fast time goes by because with those COVID years lost. The time isn't really clear, but it was nice to be back there. I have great memories of that place. Ring of Honor was tremendous circa 2007, 8, 9, 10, that Nigel McGuinness era. Tremendous. Once they went corporate, they weren't quite the same. There's still a lot of great entertainment out there. I don't understand people who do there's been no good music since back in the day. There's been no good wrestling. There's been no good boxing. There's been no good anything. Everything stopped when they were in high school and college.
Right. Unfortunately, people be people, and that's what I like to say. It's people.
Yeah, but the thing is, as somebody involved in the arts, I know so many great indie musicians who are brilliant musicians, friends, many of them.
Mm-hmm.
To say that there's no good music, it's a slap in the face, really. And even R&B today, you'll see old school R&B fans, old school jazz fans. There's nothing today. Go check out Avery Sunshine. She's tremendous. Go check out Maxwell. He's tremendous. Live. I'm telling you, live performers. There's great performers out there. Avery Sunshine's as great as anybody, but the average person wouldn't know her. They just wouldn't know her. But you go see her live, just fabulous. Eric Robeson, great. These guys, and then you get the guys who rage. That's not rock and roll, and they put them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's all branches from the same tree. If you have any clue about music and really understand the history, it's basically all going to stem from R&B and gospel anyway.
Yeah.
and rap is like a cousin of R&B.
Mm-hmm.
What's the DNA of rap? James Brown, George Clinton, and probably Roger Troutman.
Yeah.
You know, probably.
No, it's facts.
Yeah, funky drummer James Brown.
Hmm.
You know that's on thousands of hip hop
Yeah.
records, thousands. I'm an old white guy that loves hip hop, and I hear these other old white guys. It's not music. It's not music. It's not music. You go see Public Enemy; they have a live band on stage. How is it
Yeah.
not music?
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I used to see Public Enemy tour with Living Color. You know, the same bill. They would tour all the time. Just like Tower of Power and Average White Band. They would tour together, Temptations and Four Tops. I guess it's the same bookers. They would book these bands together. And you can't tell me rap's not music when you have musicians on stage. It's just
Facts.
stupid.
It's facts. Which, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot, but I mean, I think we might just do, if you're down with it, we might want to do another one, just music, because we kind of just skim the surface. So if you're down, I'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely. I love music, and I love all genres of music. The irony is I grew up in mostly a Black and Hispanic neighborhood. I'm going to see Potato Valdez this Thursday, percussion man.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm finding as I'm getting older, I'm finally catching some of these rock bands, because I was weaned on R&B and blues and jazz. I wasn't weaned on rock. So like I'll go see Deep Purple or somebody today, the Doobie Brothers, whoever, and I'm like, these guys are good musicians, you know, because I didn't really listen to it back then. Mm-hmm. So I'm discovering a lot of these rock bands late. I went to see Yes, you know, and you know, sometimes the singing doesn't grab me, but the musicianship is great. Like I was saying with Morrissey, you know, the guy's a performer, you know. So some people, it's like they're clutching the same dozen albums from high school. And it doesn't matter what genre it is, you know, but the old white guys, Kiss and Boston and the Stones and the Beatles. And it's like nothing else happens.
Nothing else matters.
1973. You know, I think they're missing out on a lot, honestly. And I'll tell you, I hear old R&B guys, you know, trashing rap. And, you know, I don't think that's fair either, because I understand some modern rappers will have a materialistic message or whatnot.
Right.
But you can't tell me bands like De La Soul aren't positive, and
right.
You know, and these guys are all still out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's they're still touring, and some of it's great music. Diggable Planets, I'd go see them tomorrow if they were playing. And that's jazz. That's jazz meets hip hop. How could you say it's not music? It's not music.
Music. This is absurd. Absurd.
Absolutely.
Which I linked it because I'm actually my device is actually powering down, but we could do this all day. I linked it in the description, but for where could people find? Obviously, you can find The Wrestler everywhere, but 350 Days and the book. Tell people where they can find it and more about you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Basically, 350 Days. You could go to Amazon. We have another film, Wrestling Then and Now, with Killer Kowalski and Nikolai and Don Arnold, a bunch of legends. Homicide's in it also. That you can see on Tubi, absolutely free. Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, my book. You could grab it on Amazon, or you could contact me through any of my social media, Evan Ginzberg, right there on Facebook, or Evan Ginzberg's Old School Wrestling Memories on Facebook. I'm not hard to find. And we do a podcast, Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. And the reason it's called Wrestling and Everything is we don't want to just talk about wrestling, you know, because, I mean, you have literally 50,000 wrestling podcasts. 50,000. How many times do you need somebody to review Raw, which wasn't even worth watching, most likely?
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes there's a whole world outside of wrestling, as much as I love wrestling. Yeah, man, I'll go see AEW when it hits town, TNA when it hits town. I mean, I still enjoy it. I can't say anything touches some of what I saw years ago, but Osprey certainly does.
Yeah,
Osprey's an artist, boy. I'll tell you. So is Kenny Omega. He may have lost a step or two at this point, but
right.
Kenny Omega's amazing. A lot of these guys. Okada is not what he was. Not in AEW.
No
Not what,
injuries. Yeah,
yeah. Which is a shame because and WWE just killed Nakamura dead.
yeah. Unfortunately, his New
They
Japan
did
stuff
that
is
guy.
just amazing.
Yeah. You watch Nakamura and AJ Styles at Wrestle Kingdom. It
Yeah,
was a masterpiece. Then you watch it at WrestleMania, it was a shell of what it was.
yeah.
And then you watch him in recent years, it's very like instantly forgettable, vanilla, same five moves, WWE. It's a shame what he could have been one of the all-time greats. And
Greats.
so
Yeah,
when I get into that discussion, people do the well, he made a lot of money and he's happy. And yeah, but sometimes artists want to create art. For
right.
Osprey, it's more important to create the art,
A-
and
That's what it should be. I feel that's it.
oh,
I mean,
me too. I'm not when we did the wrestler, I was getting pitched all kinds of wrestling projects, and some guy pitched me a Chris Benoit thing, a documentary. I said, I'm not putting my name on that. I don't know where how that's going to end up. Are they turning him into a hero or whatnot? You could turn down a paycheck once in a while if you're not comfortable with something. And
yeah. I mean, again, for the validity of the sake of pretty much being able to look yourself in the mirror. Sometimes you have to turn some stuff down, right?
oh yeah, yeah, I do it. I do it when I need to. Some of these guys, Cena should turn down a paycheck occasionally. Makes a lot of bad movies. Not all, but many. And The Rock, his filmography has some pretty bad movies on there also. Sometimes you could turn down a paycheck. If I see you trying to wrap up, I'll let you go, man.
No, you're great. Yeah, I was gonna deal, but Evan, thank you so much again, folks. Everything about Evan is in the description. Go ahead and check him out. Thank you, Evan, for doing this. Thank you guys for watching. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast. Evan, you're subscribed, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah. And I'm subscribed too because it's not nepotistic for you to want yourself to do well, right? So I feel like that's right.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't be ashamed to promote yourself. I mean, you want people to experience your art. You do a great show. You want people to see it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And
Thank
thank you
you.
guys for
Thank you.
watching us. Bye.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to Woods YouTube.